Hi, Karen Alari here again, and today we're going to talk about the first step in your painting process, and that's choosing your reference photo. I keep my camera with me wherever I am pretty much, and if I'm out painting on location or just taking a walk or going to a friend's house, I'll take lots and lots of digital photos and bring them back home, and then I spend time going through them and choosing which ones I want to paint. So the first thing that I do is I'm looking at a painting as a reference photo to decide whether I want to use it is to ask myself, do I like it? And that you really have to have sort of a gut reaction to an image for it to mean something to you and for you to want to follow through and do a painting of it. But once you've done that, you kind of got to bring your mind into play and look at some elements of the photograph, especially when you're first starting out, to make things simple for yourself. Some images are very complex and you like them, but they might not be the best ones to make a painting of. Maybe you should just print out the photograph and enjoy it that way. So I liked this image, and what I say to myself is, why do I like it? And what I liked about it was just the story it tells about a beautiful sunny day in the summer and taking a walk and finding this little road going who knows where, who knows what's over the hill. So it has a hopeful feeling to me. And I like that, and it's something that I'm going to keep in mind throughout the painting process because that's going to help me make some decisions later on in the painting when I keep reminding myself, why did I make this painting? Why did I choose this reference? And is what I'm trying to do adding to that story, or is it just extra and I need to edit that out? So that's my story, is wandering up this road and looking to see what we're going to find on the other side. Okay, so what that leads to next is to first establish what is your focal point. And by focal point, I mean, where do you want your eye to go? Where do you want your viewer's eye to go? And later, we will talk about ways to actually emphasize that focal point and bringing it out when you're painting. But right now, let's just establish that there is one and that we can identify it. So my focal point in this painting is going to be this area where the path or the road goes around the corner in front of this dark tree. So that's one important aspect that we should talk about now, is you want a dark and a light that come together. That's where your eye automatically goes, is where there's contrast, whether it be color contrast or light dark contrast, your eye's going to go there. So that's my focal point. And knowing that is the second step. Now, if I establish this as my focal point, are the various lines in the image leading to the focal point? Well, this one, they pretty clearly are. I've got this road that leads to my focal point, the lines in the mountains, in this hillside, all lead to the focal point. I even have the roof of this shed here that's pointing over towards the focal point. So yes, we definitely have lines in the image that are leading to the focal point. The fourth thing is, can I see the simple large shapes? In other words, are there enough, is the image simple enough that I can identify, okay, here's a large, simple light area. There's a simple area here that I can identify in the foreground. And in order to identify these shapes, you want to squint your eyes. We'll be talking a lot about squinting. When you squint your eyes, you get rid of the detail, and values that are close together blend together, so you just see flat mass shapes. And that's so helpful to you when you're painting. You want to just be able to see those shapes simply. Okay, so this one has some nice, big, identifiable shapes to it, and that's what we want to make sure we have. We can still use a reference photo if it doesn't have these simple large shapes, but you'll just know that you're going to have to edit a lot out till we can get to simple shapes. Otherwise, your image is just going to be too busy and it won't come across well. The other thing I think about the next thing I think about after the simple large shapes, do I like the light? Is it got good light? Sunlight is easiest to paint, certainly for me. It's harder to paint a reference photo when it's a cloudy day and you don't have a clear sunlight and shadow pattern. It's hard to see the actual shapes of the images, and it's not as interesting. But that being said, maybe the mood you're trying to create is a melancholy mood or a sad mood or a pensive mood, and that lends itself better to a cloudy day. So again, you're always going back to, why did I like it? And do the light and shadows, does the light pattern reinforce my focal point and why the point of making this painting? And it does. So I like the light in this one, and that passes that test. The next thing I look for is, do I like the color? Am I going to be able to work with this color? Is it fun? Now, some people aren't that interested in color, but personally, myself as an artist, color is really important. And one of the things I look for in color is contrasts in color. This red tree is going to contrast nicely with these green bushes. Whenever you have complementary colors which are opposite each other on the color wheel, and we'll talk about that later, but whenever you have that, you're going to create more interest and vibrancy in your painting. So I really like this big red tree against the lush greens that we have going on here, and I will play that up in the painting. In fact, I will probably push that color, and by pushing I mean I'll probably make this tree a little bit redder in order to get that contrast going on. And those are just the choices you make as an artist to make this simple everyday image say something that you want it to say. And then the last thing that I look for is balance. And in talking about balance, the next thing we need to talk about is the cropping of the photo, because that's what I would do at this point. I'm sure I've kind of gone through these ideas in my mind, and I like this image. I'm sure I can work with this image. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is crop it to the size of my canvas. And I'm going to use a 9 by 12 inch canvas. Now I'm doing this in Photoshop Elements. Most photo programs have a cropping element, or you can just print out your photo and physically crop it down or sketch it out in the crop that you want it to be. I just find it simpler to work with these programs, but the concept is the same no matter how you do it. So I'm going to establish this 9 by 12 inch box here and see where I want to put it, see where I want my major elements to go. And one of the major things I use in terms of cropping and deciding where I want my big elements to be is this rule of thirds. You see how it's divided the image horizontally and vertically into thirds, and it's where these thirds overlap. Those are good places to put focal points. That's called the rule of thirds. And so I'm going to look for, how do I want to crop this that my focal point, which I've already established is going to be right here, is on or close to one of these intersections. And certainly you don't want it right in the middle of the painting, either horizontally or vertically. You want it to be off to one side or another, and that's going to give you better balance. So if I move this down about to here, I get this area of interest pretty close to the focal point without cropping off too much. And the real reason I'm doing any cropping at all is I felt like this tree was centered right in the middle of the image, and I didn't want it to be centered. I wanted it to be off a little bit. And obviously when you're painting, you can come back and move them yourself too during the painting process, which is just fine. But so I wanted to crop it down a little bit, so I moved it over a little bit, but I still want to get this sweep of the road in there, and I want to get make sure that my balance is okay. So if I do this crop, The only thing I'm a little bit worried about is it seems a little heavy on this side and maybe light on this side, but with the way this hill flows downward into the tree and the fact that I have this bank of bushes and weeds here to work with, I will probably play these up a little bit so they're a little bit stronger and balance the weight of this dark mass here a little bit more. And we'll talk about balance further on when we talk about composition some more. But at this point, we just want to get started and get our image cropped to where we want it to be so we can get started painting. And at this point, I would either print this photo out and use the printed copy to paint from, or I would paint directly from my computer monitor, which is what I do most of the time, is I just leave it up on the monitor and I get started painting. So let's do that.